Okay, this is Mr. Horst. Today we're going to be learning how to make an ocarina. Basically, it's a musical whistle composed of an empty hollow ball of clay with a mouthpiece that you can blow into. Airflow goes in through the mouthpiece and it travels over an opening and then up a ramp there that you have to construct yourself. And if you want to, you can add some extra holes that you could place your fingers over to make different notes when you play or when you blow into it. A simple version that you might start with might look something like this. This is one of the very first ones that I ever made. It's a simple hollow ball of clay with a mouthpiece attached and an opening carved into it. That's what we're going to discuss in this video. And then I did carve some extra holes into it to make some different notes. First of all, you're going to need a couple tools to do this job. You'll need clay in a plastic bag so you can keep it fresh. You'll need a pin tool and one of these wire loop tools. This will be used for removing some of the clay. Also, in order to make the mouthpiece opening, you'll need a popsicle stick to do it. I also have here a jar of slip so that we can use that to make the connections. First thing to do would be to take a chunk of clay out of the bag, about the size of your fist or so when you all smash it together. And the very first step would be to wedge the clay. Take that and smash it down repeatedly, coming in different directions. And after doing this for 30 seconds or so, you have a pretty good feeling that the clay has been smashed together. There are no folds, creases, or air bubbles or anything like that in the middle. Take the clay now and you're going to smash it into a ball. This can be done by kind of cupping your hands and throwing the clay back and forth from hand to hand. Meanwhile, your other hand is coming up to meet it, so it kind of connects with a smacking noise, and you're kind of cupping your hands so they're a little bit rounded shape, and just passing it back and forth from hand to hand, rotating it around as you go, and smashing out all the bumps so that it's kind of evenly across there. The size of the whistle can change. If it's a smaller whistle, it's going to end up with a higher pitched noise, and the larger it is, the lower pitched it will be. At this point, I feel like I'm going to have a pretty big whistle, so I'm just going to take a little bit of this clay extra and save it for my mouthpiece. I'm going to stash it back in my plastic bag so that it doesn't dry out, and take this clay here and reform that ball. Okay, now in order to make this hollow, the technique that we're going to show on this video is to separate this into two equal-sized pieces and then basically make two cups, two kind of pinch pots that will go together with an empty space in the middle. In order to separate them, try to feel with your hands about halfway across the sphere and just twist the clay back and around a few times until it breaks apart, and you'll end up with two roughly equal-sized chunks of clay, and we'll turn these into the pinch pots. Basically, a pinch pot is made by holding the ball of clay with your thumbs in the middle and your fingers on the outside, pinching the clay as you rotate it around, and kind of seeking out whatever area is thickest and flattening it out so that it gradually becomes thinner and thinner. This is something that really goes by feel. You don't even have to look at it. Just kind of feel what area is a little bit thicker than the others and keep pinching that. My hands are staying the same place and basically making this pinching motion, and the clay is traveling around in a circle in order so that I can feel it on all different sides. Okay, that should be pretty good. How thick should it be? You don't want the walls to be too thick, but if you get very thin, then it becomes very flimsy and hard to work with too. So keep it something like that, about the size of your pinky or a little bit smaller perhaps. And that's basically 1/2 of the whistle. Now on to the second one. We'll do the same thing here. First of all, pinching down with your thumbs in the middle and your fingers on the outside, rotate it around. seek out the areas that are a little bit thicker and focus on those just a little bit at a time. You're not really trying to do this fast here. Just kind of go a little pinch here and there until it feels evenly thick. It should match up about the same size opening as your first one. At this point, when I'm feeling like they're pretty good, they're pretty close to the same size, you can gently tap it down on the canvas so that it kind of flattens out the connection so that it's nice and even. Something like that would be all right. And now we're going to connect them. This clay is very fresh and would stick together pretty easily, but it is always a good habit, especially on a connection like this, to score and slip the clay. I'm using my pin tool now to score the clay, scratch the surface of it repeatedly. So it's kind of exposing the inside guts of the clay so that when I put the slip on in a minute, the slip will kind of soak down into those cracks that I made there. It is the best way to combine clay, especially if the clay is a little bit dry. It's a very important trick. Right now the clay I have is very soft, so I probably could get away with just smearing it together. But scoring and slipping is a good habit, especially for a student or a beginner. So we have the score marks now. I'm just going to take some of this slip here, and the slip is just clay and water. It's kind of like a muddy consistency. If your slip is too dry, just add some water to it. And now I'm going to kind of slime this by patting it down right over those cracks that I made. And what this is doing now is making the connection where these two pieces are going to be smashed together. It's making that connection very soft, very fresh clay so that it easily sticks together. Wet clay sticks together much better than dry clay. That's why we're doing this step of scoring and slipping the clay to make the connection extra wet. Okay, now we've got two sides that are about to be joined together. We'll place them together end to end like this. And gently, you don't want to ruin the shape of your sphere here, but you do need to kind of smash this connection together. So that's what I'm going to work on right now, just basically using my thumb to work it around. And kind of working over this seam so that we end up not really seeing it, even though it was there in the first place. Okay, so working this around, you could use a wooden tool. You could even use your popsicle for a job like this of smearing this across if you want to be civilized with a tool, or just use your thumb. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Once it's all together, you can start kind of reshaping this back into the shape that you want it to be. Usually an ocarina does have kind of a flattened side to it, but it's okay to make them in a perfectly round shape if you wanted to. Okay, so something like this would be a good goal for the first day of class. Let's get a hollow ball of clay that is worked over so that we have no openings whatsoever. The next thing that you're going to do now is to work on making this mouthpiece. So you can see, compared to my example here, the part we've got here is the base. Now we're going to attach this little mouthpiece, this box of clay here, so that we can blow into it and make the noise. It should be at least an inch long, but not too long so that it's hard to thread the popsicle stick through there. So something like that would be fine. Now I'm going to dig into my bag. And find that extra clay there that I saved so that I can work on this. Maybe I should store this, but this clay is so wet that I actually want it to dry out a little bit. So while I'm working on this, I'm going to set this aside right here on the table and let it dry a little bit. It will be easier to carve the voicing of the ocarina once the clay is a little bit drier. Now, in order to do this, like the example, I basically made like a box of clay, like a little shoebox kind of shape. And to do that, you might repeatedly tap this down on the canvas on all directions. That's one way that you can kind of make like a square shape or like a box, rectangle shape. You want it to be wide enough that this popsicle stick can go through it. Other than that, the size or shape of it is kind of up to you. I feel like mine is a little bit too bulky right now, so I'm just going to take this pin tool and trim off some of this extra here, and then smash it down again to make it thinner. Okay, so now we have something like this that will make a good mouthpiece. It looks a little bit too long for what I wanted, so I'm just going to cut some more off here. That should be fine. Now, when you attach it, the location that you attach this is very important. It should not go directly towards the middle of the whistle, but instead it needs to connect more towards the top of it, so that basically the top of your mouthpiece will smoothly transition into the top of the main body of the whistle. My other one that I made, you can see that too. So it goes straight into it, right into the top of the whistle, of the main body. So in order to do that, I think a good way to do it, rather than just kind of smashing it on there, why don't we try to trim down this this mouthpiece a little bit so that it looks kind of like a little curve there. That will allow us to attach it pretty easily on there. So that's what I'm going to do next. Just take a pin tool, slice that off, and now it can be smashed on anywhere I want to, really. The location of this doesn't really matter at all. So something like this. To attach it, a good technique would be to score and slip again. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just making an outline with my pin tool of where it's going to connect. And again, before I do that, let me stress again, it should be smoothly going flat from the top of the mouthpiece right into the top of the whistle. That clay is already kind of sticking on there, so I don't need to score and slip too much here. I'm just going to do the score marks going across, and a little bit of scoring on this area too, on both sides of the connection, and just a little bit of slip will help it stick on there pretty easily. Okay, so now we're ready to attach this. Again, I find that place that it was and smash it on there. Clay is easy to stick together when you really smash it, but when you have something that's coming off the side of your project like this, it's much more fragile, so you need to take care that you attach it properly. What does that mean? Score and slip for sure, and then also you really got to smear it on there. I'm just going to use my popsicle stick again here to kind of smooth this out. So I really feel like I'm smashing the clay on there. I might even take a little bit extra of some of these chunks that I carved off here and roll in my hands a very small coil. I can put that right on the seam here and kind of smash that in. That will just give it a little bit of extra welding there to make sure that it stays attached. When you work the clay, you kind of compress it, you smash it a little bit, so it's a good idea to add a little bit of clay before you go about smashing it together. I'll do the same thing going across the bottom and on the other side. Something like that should be fine. Right in the corner here. Okay. And you can kind of clean it up. The craftsmanship is really up to you here. My first one that I ever made, I wasn't too concerned about making it look pretty, just was kind of testing it. But for your project, you'll probably want to make it as nice and perfect as you possibly can at every stage. Okay. Now, I'm just going to kind of readjust this here. If you find that your whistle is angled more like this and it's not as flat as it should be, just gently turn it upside down and press it on the table a few times to get that to kind of flatten out like this, so it's more evenly flat straight across the top, something like that. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to cut a little bit more of this off here. I'm not just to make it a little bit more even and shorter. And now we're ready to go about actually carving in the mouthpiece and the voicing of this ocarina. Take a look here at where it's located. I think a good way to imagine this is that your opening of the whistle has to be kind of flush with the inside wall of the sphere that's right here. So if you imagine that this part of the whistle here is about this thick, right? Well, the opening should come along right up, straight up from the inside of that, so that it opens up right there. So right tapping on the inside right of this opening, that's basically the wall of your ocarina going down here. So a common mistake would be to carve this opening too far back. If you make it right in the middle here, it's not going to make any noise. Also, if you do it too far forward, so it's out here in the mouthpiece, your opening, it also will not work either. So first of all, deciding where this is going to go. Again, imagine the clay is about that thick. I want to line it up with the inside of the wall. So somewhere, looking at this, it'll be about somewhere like right here in this area here. Now, how big do you make the opening of your whistle? It should be pretty small. I think the size of your pinky fingernail is a good estimate, all right? So that's pretty small. If you make the opening way too big, another common mistake is to make that way too big while you're working on it. You accidentally carve out so that it's a lot bigger. If it looks like that size, it's not going to work either. So keep it pretty small, especially if you have a small ball of clay. It needs to be pretty small. Okay, now I'm going to press in this popsicle stick that I had, and I'm going to try to press it in so that when it goes directly in here, it's angled towards that little guide that I made. But more importantly, I want it to be flat and parallel with the top of the mouthpiece, so that it's going in like this. Another common mistake that kids make is to have this go angled too far down, so that it's going into the empty body, the empty inside of the whistle, when in reality you want it to go, you want that airflow to go right to this point here on the inside edge. Okay, so in order to do that, I got my popsicle stick now, and I'm going to press it into the whistle. And this is a delicate step here, so make sure you're doing it correctly. Make sure at all times, make sure it's going in straight, make sure it's going in flat, so that it stays correct. I'm just every step I make here, I'm just double checking it, make sure it looks good, and angling it right down towards that opening. Make sure it's going in pretty straight. Looks pretty good so far. Now, how far is it going? I want it to go basically to right here. I want to push this popsicle stick into this far and no farther, really. So sometimes what I do is grab an extra one to just see how far in it really is. And I notice now that it actually looks pretty good. It's basically right where I wanted it to be. So that looks pretty good. What I got to do now is dig out some of this clay in that opening. I'm going to try to do it right down. So using my wire loop tool now, I'm going to dig down to the popsicle stick and see if I can make contact here while I press down. There, I can feel it already. I'm going to press this in and slide across just a little bit, and then take that out. So I just removed basically the opening of the whistle. It's pretty small, so don't take out a lot of clay there. I'm just going to kind of clean it up. The more clean and perfect you make this whistle, the better it's going to work. So just getting rid of extra gunk or extra little chunks can make a big difference sometimes. Looks pretty good. At this point, I'm going to take back the popsicle stick just a little bit so that it is just right inside there, but I'm not going to pull it all the way out, just leaving it right there for now. And what I want to see when I look down in this hole is the empty space. Obviously I don't yet, because I see the inner wall, inner clay of the whistle. So keep digging. I got my wire loop tool. I'm going to dig some more, basically straight down there until we start to see darkness of the inside of the whistle. what I do here is just press it straight down. Try not to enlarge the size of your opening that you made. And then once you take out a chunk of clay like this, just use your fingers to scrap that off and then dig down again until you're seeing darkness down there. Try to remove the clay. If it does fall in there on accident, it's not a big deal. It will still work, but just try to get rid of it if you can. And that's looking pretty good already, okay? So we see the inner edge there. I'm going to kind of clean that up here, getting rid of what I'm talking about is on the inside, on the right over there. I'm trying to clean up that inner wall so that the airflow can come up, straight up, right out the opening there. Okay, now there is a lot of clay. I can see a lot of clay on the inner edge there, and I'm going to have to get rid of some of that. But first, I want to see where my angle cut needs to be. What I'm talking about when I say angle cut is this part of the whistle right here. It's kind of like a ramp that goes down from here, and it angles down kind of at a 45-degree angle, and it meets right here at a little point of a wedge, and that's where the airflow should travel. The way that a whistle works is when you blow into it, a lot of the air that you blew into it is stuck on the inside of the whistle, and it causes there to be an area of high pressure, and what that does is it blows your airstream up the ramp and out into the open air. But when that happens, it causes an area of low pressure inside the whistle so that your airstream goes down again into the whistle. And when that happens repeatedly very quickly, it vibrates, and that's what causes the noise of the whistle to work. So what we need to do is carve that angle cut and that line there, just so that when you blow into it, when you look through the opening of the whistle, you should just barely, you should see that that front of that angle, and that's what we're going to try to do now. So I'm going to take this popsicle stick and just press it in one more time, and I'm going to see where that connects on the far wall there. I'm going to take my wire loop tool, and my plan is to kind of dig down at an angle. Okay, so I'm going to kind of lower the wire loop tool in like this, and then slide it across, and then lift it back up so that we can remove clay in a wedge kind of shape at an angle cut. So that's what I'm doing now. Press in the wire loop tool, swipe it across, and lift up, and we can get rid of some of that clay. This clay is so wet that it's kind of hard to work with. It does actually work better to do this if it's a little dry, but I think we'll get it to work. So now we have an angle cut there, but I have a hunch, just from remembering it before, that there's a lot of clay built up underneath that cut, and there is. You can kind of see it underneath that ramp. We want to get rid of that too, and that's very difficult to do. Without ruining your small hole. So you can try to reach down in there with a tool, a wire loop tool or a pin tool. Sometimes it helps, I'm just clearing this out here while I talk, sometimes it helps to carve a little bit of an angle on this side right here, and that will allow you to reach down into the whistle a little bit better without ruining the shape of it. So that's what I'm going to try to do now. I'm going to try to lower this popsicle stick in carefully and scrape out clay from the underside of that whistle down there. So lowering it down in there and kind of going around, and then lifting it back up. Now it kind of got stuck there. What I would do is just grab my pin tool now and try to poke this out here as best I can. Reach down in with that wire loop tool and dig it back out. Okay, so I got to come kind of around there in all directions, so I'm just going around and around carefully right underneath that. You want that angle to be pretty sharp there. Now it got stuck again. And gently remove this clay. You're a surgeon at this part. You don't want to ruin the shape of it here, and you don't want to make the hole any bigger, so just carefully do it. Now I see a lot down there on the left side as I'm looking at it, so that's what I'm working on next. Did kind of ruin the shape of the whistle, that wedge there, but I can go ahead and fix that, no problem. And lastly, I want to redo this area here right by the inside of the whistle looking down. While I was working on it, I kind of disturbed that, so I want to make that again smooth as I can. Every time I press out, there's a little bit of clay that comes with it, so I'm just trying to get rid of that as well. Try that a few times until it looks pretty clean. I'm going to try to reform this wedge a little bit better here now that I did get it out. It's not pretty, but I actually have a feeling that this whistle will work once we get it all lined up. When you look through the opening here, this will be hard to see on the video, you should see that wedge right in there. And if you do, and everything's clean, it should make a noise when you blow into it. And this one does. It's not the most clear sound, so I would spend some more time working on it to kind of clean things up to get it to work a little bit better. But that is the basics of making a clay whistle. From there, you can do anything you want to this thing. You can add more holes for your fingers to play different notes. You can add clay on to build it into a sculpture, like this one here, where the whistle is the head, and then the rest of the body has been made kind of as just a sculptural element attached onto it, when this is the basic shape of it. So there's a lot you can do with an ocarina, even if it's something not too complicated, but just kind of an elegant design like this one here. All right? Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, see me in class.